Welcome back. Today we have a very special guest, and I'm very honored to be able to introduce Darin Olien, who wrote the book SuperLife. And you may actually know Darin from his endeavors with Zac Efron in the net series where they travel around the world, and they're searching for healthier, sustainable ways to live, and it's called Down to Earth. We actually checked it out, and we thought it was really cool. So we are really honored to have Darin with us today, another brain warrior after our own heart, who's like really trying to find the healthiest way for people to live and sustain the earth. And we're just really honored you're with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh man, thank you. It's a shared honor to be here and discuss these things with you guys for sure.
Can you tell us part of your journey? So how did you get to the point where health is really such an important part of your mission?
It's funny because it literally goes all the way back to the point of birth for me. I was premature by 2 months, and in 1970, they gave me a 50-50 chance of surviving. So really, it was through a lot of work, really discovering that in an inherent deep level, my first kind of inkling or understanding in this world was it was dangerous. I was susceptible. And so there was a lot of kind of issues as I was kind of growing up with a resting heart rate of 120 beats per minute, overactive thyroids. They weren't sure my lungs were fully developed. It was all of these things that kind of set this trajectory. And really just fast forwarding, I was a regular kid from Minnesota, and just eating, horribly, but what everyone else ate. And spontaneously at the age of 13, I saw in the Minneapolis Star and Tribune, I saw an article on a cleanse. And listen, my mom and dad were definitely not hippies at all. They're regular people. And I just saw this article and I told my mom to get me a bunch of grapefruits, and I'm just going to start eating grapefruits. And I think she didn't even really register. She just got grapefruits and didn't really realize that I was just eating grapefruits for like 3 days in a row. And I was the first time consciously I felt the difference between what was going on in my mouth to how I felt. And obviously it helped my brain as well, because I was all over the place. But of course I went back to being a regular kid, and I was stimulating myself with literally the old fashioned bottles of Coke. I was drinking about 6 of those a day. And just, bouncing off the walls. And then really at 16, I started working out and picking up my first dumbbell and realizing my first messaging was I was weak, I was vulnerable from that birth experience. And so when I started weight training and realizing I could get stronger, I then started going, food is important, because I remember I just did that at 13. And so it just kind of started coming together, and I started becoming stronger in a lot of both internally and externally. I then started playing all the sports and football. And then it really, the short answer to the long journey was that I was in college, starting fullback, and in football, and I had a career-ending injury, and then I couldn't keep playing football, and so then these whole worlds came together where I changed majors. I studied physiology and nutrition and kinesiology, and then just got the awareness that this body is an utter miracle, and if we start putting the right things in place, that we can actually heal it. So the allopathic world didn't get me back playing again. It didn't put me back on the field. It didn't make me feel better, because I was absolutely depressed. When you're a kid that wants to play football and do all these things, naturally, that just came to a crashing halt. So once I started getting into that, that was it. And then it kind of progressed from there. I was fascinated with food and nutrition, and realized that a lot of these ingredients and even these marketing words didn't equate to actually what was showing up, not only as food in the marketplace, but also as supplements. So then I started literally formulating things and traveling around the world to sources of where these great medicinal plants are. And from there, I started really getting into it. And so, yeah, that's the quick version of how I kind of, through my own needs and necessity and really going all the way back to the beginning, I had to find the answers myself.
Wow. So I don't know if you know, but I did the big NFL study when the NFL was sort of not telling the truth about traumatic brain injury in football. I have 300 NFL players, cool players like Terry Bradshaw and Freddie Dryer and Jack Youngblood. And the incidence of brain damage is stunning. But 80% of our players get better. We put them on a brain health rehabilitation program, which just speaks to the miracle of our bodies, is that if you put them in a healing environment, no matter how bad you have been to them, that they can be better. And how exciting is that?
I felt a couple of parallels with you as you were telling your story. You're a sick kid. I was a very sick kid. Super sick kid, had cancer at 23 that kept coming back, lots of issues, always on antibiotics when I was little, frequent flyer at the hospital. And then it was around 16 that I discovered working out. And I didn't really know how to eat healthy, but I discovered working out and my journey sort of began there. And it's interesting when I hear so many people that we work with who are like, well, I've just always been this way. I was born this way. And I'm like, I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my 50s. And I was really sick at one point, and so much that I wanted to die. I went into a deep depression. So I was like listening to your journey and I'm like, wow, it's just, there's so many parallels. And here I've seen your show on Netflix and you're incredibly healthy. So I just, you look great, you're healthy, you're living this amazing life. And I just want people listening to hear that. And it kind of doesn't matter, even if you've been bad to your brain and your body for a long time, you can still make it better. You just need to start now. You need to get started.
Yeah, I mean, it's a miracle, and just both of what you're saying. I mean, the force of nature that wants to heal and drive forward is so powerful. But we've also put so many stumbling blocks in front of ourselves from these modern day kind of conveniences that kind of have a sting to them in our life, and the kind of food quality that's just plummeted since Industrial Revolution. And going back to I think the health of it's like diversity, I think, and challenges breed opportunity. I think I saved myself from a lot more hits in the head on the one hand, Doc, right? So and through that kind of stopping, that abrupt stopping, it turned this curiosity and this fascination on with this healing potentiality that exists within us. And so there's two very strong principles. If you eliminate the exposure to things that are causing disease, and you can easily go down a list of 60,000 toxins emitted in our atmosphere every year that are untested, are not necessarily biologically supportive, and on and on and on. But then if you increase these nutrient-dense compounds and plants and life-giving waters, then the miracles literally are kind of spewing out and benefiting us as we go. And I can't imagine. It would be fun to be like a fly on the wall to some of the people that you're dealing with, because I think that having seen it myself in my own way, you see the power that happens if you stop one thing that's causing harm and you turn on the other things that are causing life. You're right. There is no stopping life in that way. So it's very powerful.
Well, and I often say brain health is three things. It's brain envy. You have to care about it. Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I've not seen it once in my 40-year psychiatric career. But you have to care about your brain and then avoid things that hurt it, just like you talked about, and do things that help it. And you just have to know the lists. And I'm sure our lists are actually probably very similar. I went to our daughter's second grade class and 20 things on the board. And I'm like, so separate the healthy things from the unhealthy things. And they got everything right except orange juice, which they put in the healthy category. And I'm like, no, way too much sugar to have, a glass of orange juice is the sugar of 5 oranges.
Yeah, just eat the oranges.
Eat the orange and you'll be great. So I think none of it is hard if we get the right mindset. So when we come back, we're going to ask Darin about some of his most effective tips on how to have a better brain, a better body, and a better life. If there's one thing you learned, write it down. Take a picture of it and post it on any of your social media sites. We just dearly love if you went to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, leave us a comment, question, or a review. We'll enter you into a raffle to win either Tana's new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, or my book, The End of Mental Illness. Stay with us. Welcome back. What should I eat? We are here with Darin Olien and excited to talk with him and talking about his book, SuperLife, and the new Netflix show he's on with Zac Efron, which is really fun, down to earth. And Darin, we're just so grateful for your time. So how did you get involved in superfoods? And you've actually brought a couple of superfoods to the attention of the world. So I'm really excited to learn about your journey with food.
Yeah, well, I think it came out of the way of necessity, breeds kind of the investigation. And I think the genesis was, early in my days, I started working with a pharmacist in Colorado after I graduated school, and I started looking at the supplement world, and then when I started digging into supplementation and foods and functional foods, I realized that no one really knows where these foods are coming from. If it's where's your turmeric coming from, where's the active compound, is there even an active compound in it anymore when it shows up in this powder, and you're supposed to take the marketing on as truth. We all know that that's a dangerous proposition, right? So as I was seeing the marketing stories of this incredible indigenous and long-standing food and supplements and spices from Ayurveda for 40,000 years of use to traditional Chinese medicine, 10,000 plus years of use of some of the great medicinal plants in the world, I just didn't buy the story that all these marketing people, I started testing them, and then these active compounds that were really the gatekeeper of turning on and turning off different genes and expressing different things in the body for health, longevity, recovery, stress, all of this stuff. And it just wasn't lining up with the story and what was actually in these bottles and packages and food. So it was just this light bulb moment where I said, listen, I'm actually from, South Dakota, Minnesota, and my grandfather sold tractors. My cousins and everything are ranchers, and my dad was an agricultural professor at the University of Minnesota. So for me, farmers are first. Who are the farmers? Who are the collectors? Who are the foragers? How are they caring for these incredible plants? And where the hell are they? And where can I go to understand that? So the innocence of literally going around to 40 plus countries around the world in the middle of the Amazon and the peaks of the Andes and everything in between, I really came by way of it as an innocence, because I said, listen, I can sit here and do a Google search and look at research, but that's not going to tell me how that plant is being cared for that comes all the way into a product that sits on a shelf, and is that actually going to benefit somebody? So that's how it all happened. And then I just got so curious with the myriad of things. I'd go after one food or ingredient or botanical, and I'd come back going, seeing 30 different things I never even knew existed. So
that was wild. That's wild.
yeah, it's phenomenal. So everything from maca to sashi-inchi to yacon to schizandra to chaga to ashwagandha to astragalus to all of these kind of different botanicals, each having their own story, their own compounds, and their own way to preserve as they're, how are they grown, how are they cared for, how are they actually processed in a way that will translate into someone taking them biologically. So that's how it all happened. And then once you're in that world and you realize that this incredible alchemy between this plant world and what these plants and these compounds that are also going through stress, that are developing these compounds that we can actually benefit from, is just extraordinary, just on their own. So you look at, and you also look at alchemy. One of my favorites, because we're talking about brain health, is this alchemy between a common coffee bean, or technically it's a seed, with the fruit that's on the outside. A good friend of mine spent a decade understanding that when you dry those together in a very careful way and you ingest them, the alchemy of that is incredibly powerful, one of the most powerful brain-derived neurotropic factors. So you realize that, man, what we are putting in our mouth is so pleomorphically affecting so many systems that it's just a miracle. And I love the research into reduction side of things, where you can see a compound has incredible benefit and you can take that and all of that stuff. But also I'm marveled at the kaleidoscopic effect and healing potential of actually taking in some of these whole plants and things like that as well.
I love that.
You know, one of the things we learned is the brain doesn't get sick in one way, and therefore it will never get better in one way, which is why single ingredient products generally do not do well in large scale randomized controlled trials. What I did with my NFL group is I put them on a great multiple vitamin, because high doses of B6, B12, folate decrease the conversion of mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. High dose, high quality omega-3 fatty acids. We did a study that showed 98% of our population, so a mental health population, were suboptimal levels of EPA and DHA. And then a brain boost that actually worked in 6 different ways. And there are many roads to trouble, which means there are also many roads out of trouble. So when you talk about it's the synergy or the alchemy of ingredients, that's what we have certainly found as well. What's a superfood that people can access that you found this really helps people?
Oh, man.
That's like saying, who's your favorite kid?
I've used that analogy. It's like, how do I decide which of my kids are my favorite at any given time?
Right.
I mean, you have, I mean, I'll just say some common ones so that people don't get overwhelmed with the exotic ones. I mean, the research around turmeric and curcumin, and the curcumin's an active compound in turmeric, and also turmerones are an active compound in turmeric. I actually take, there's times where it's great because you mentioned this population that was been at a deficit for a very long time. So we have to put these things in context. So it is appropriate to give them higher doses of things to get them back up to a normalcy, or at least a ability for body to repair itself. And so there's times like in the turmeric world where you definitely, as a panacea, taking whole organic turmeric on a consistent basis is extremely powerful for the brain, for the immune system, for digestion, for stress levels. It's incredible. And then, of course, you can look at curcumin. If you are in a high state of inflammatory response, curcumin in higher doses can show up as a fire retardant to the inflammation. So I would just say like things like turmeric, and then the alchemy also of turmeric, ginger, and pepper is extremely powerful for what's that?
I put it in tea.
Exactly. Yeah. Extremely powerful. And so then when you're taking all of those whole food forms and adding that pepper ignites and allows for the absorbability to increase by up to 2,000% of some of these compounds. So again, you kind of bow down to the miraculousness of these synergies that show up, which is kind of the foundation of even the book I wrote. Everyone was like, write a book on superfoods, when I'm like, yeah, but you need a foundation of health first. And like you were saying with the NFL guys, like you got to get them the basics of the mineral kingdom. We got to make sure that their vitamins and all of these things, or else it's like showing up to a forest fire with the squirt gun. You haven't dealt with foundational principles yet. And these guys are running around dehydrated too, and with severely low levels of this EPA and DHA. So it's like, I also like to take a step back and go, listen, let's not reduce ourselves to taking this miracle pill or thing. Let's make sure that the foundation is strong and you're taking care of, your sleep, your hydration, your diversity of plants, your getting outside, your healthy exposure to sun, like all of that stuff. And then we can start to look at very specific things to boost any other things. And I also believe, like, I look at superfoods from when you bring up B12s, if you're not coming from that population, I go into, okay, well, raw form, food grade spirulina actually has all of the B vitamins, including B12, which not a lot of people know about. So there is ways to get the micro dosing from all of these things that we need on a consistent basis from our foods in this way.
I love that. I love, we just have, again, a lot of parallels, but one thing you said about getting the foundation right before you just start throwing some of the more exotic, fancy things at people that they don't really understand yet. We have a concept we use about the 4 circles. So we work on 4 circles when we're working with someone's health. Biology. So how are they functioning, their hormones, their blood levels, their brain, all of that matters. Then there's the psychology. How are you thinking? Like, your thoughts matter, and they lie a lot, right? Then there's the social circle, because who you hang out with matters. So people are contagious. And then there's the spiritual circle. Why is the planet a better place? Because you breathe. What are you doing to add purpose and be purposeful? And we think of those like 4 wheels on a car. So if one of the tires on a wheel goes flat, or on a car goes flat, the car might drive, but it's not going to drive very well. But if more than one goes flat, so if in more than one of those areas you're not doing well, that car's going to crash eventually. And so getting their foundation right, I love that. And so it's just a really important point to make.
So helpful. So when we come back, we're going to talk about 5 simple fixes to make you healthy and fit. I love this. Darin, this is just so helpful. Darin's new show, Down to Earth, airing on Netflix.
It's a great show.
Informational, it's fun, it's funny. Zac looks disturbed when he has to go in like this iced water. I would be disturbed.
Oh, it's supposed to be so good for you, though.
His book is SuperLife. You can get it now. We're going to put a link to it in the show notes. Stay with us. Now, was there one thing you learned? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. # Brain Warriors Way podcast. We'd just be so grateful. Also, if you left us a comment, question, or review, we'll enter you into a drawing to win either Tana's new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, or The End of Mental Illness. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Amen. In The End of Mental Illness, I talk about, well, what if we reimagine mental health as brain health? And this one idea changes everything.
Welcome back to day 3 with Darin Olien. We're having such a good time talking about food. You know that gets us excited. We love this idea. I've often said everything you put on the end of your fork matters, because food is either medicine or it's poison, literally. And you, Darin, have spent your life, I don't know about your whole life, but you spent a significant portion of your life now studying the effects of food. And I love what you said about alchemy, combining how do certain combinations of foods really affect us and how they heal our bodies. And today we're going to talk about 5 simple fixes that will just make you healthy and fit. So welcome back, Darin.
Thank you. Great to be here. It's kind of ironic that we say it's simple. It is in terms of that, because I think we've gotten out of our instinctual way of living too. And so I try to break it down into a foundation that people can understand. One is this nutritional understanding that we don't have to buy into fads. We don't have to buy into that this is bad and that is bad all the time, and this carb phobia and this fat phobia and everything else. And so I just kind of make it very simple in the sense that eat a diversity of plants. And I'm, like I said, I've been plant-based for 17 years. I'm not also on that advocate saying everyone needs to do that, because we're all individuals. However, I do believe that we need to eat more of the plant kingdom. And it really comes down to the diversification of those foods. It's so easy for us to just kind of eat the same kind of 10, 15, 20 foods every day. And we really have to break that kind of bad habit and get back to some of our ancestors were eating 300 different types of foods throughout the week. So they were naturally foraging and finding. And what that's doing is that's filling in the gaps of some of the nutrients that we need, from the minerals to the vitamins to the enzymes to the antioxidants to the polyphenols that are helping us protect from free radicals. So I just really make a case in the book for a whole, healthy, plant-based, focused way of eating with a diversity of foods, and colors are your best friend. So those diversity of colors, it's kind of that easy cheat where those colors are representing different polyphenols and different antioxidants. So you definitely, like, you can look at those bell peppers and you can see all the different kinds. Well, actually the red ones and the green ones have a huge amount, sometimes 5, 6, 7 times more vitamin C, for example, than the one next to it. So you really have to create diversity of eating. The other thing is I really start to talk about oxygenation from the standpoint of when you have an acid, well, there's a couple things and they all relate. There's alkalinization, where that is really the balance of acids and alkalis in our body. And that's really a way of saying health is really through voltage. So pH is a study of, or an indicator of conductivity when it relates to what you're putting in your mouth. So it's really voltage. So we really need to understand that our body's healthy when it's able to the batteries and our cells and everything, and we have enough water that we can conduct electricity, and that electricity is really at the core of the body's ability to heal, or at the dampening of its inability to heal. So alkalinity, if you're eating, meat all day and processed foods all the time, then that's a huge amount of acidity that you're building up, and your body will have to spend time and energy and resources to try to balance that. And then I go into oxygenation. The more your body's balanced from an acid alkaline perspective, the more your body's able and has the ability to receive more oxygen. So I also get into why that's important. High oxygen environment creates this terrain where it doesn't invite anaerobic bacteria and pathogens in it. So I get back to that essentially germ theory versus terrain theory, and that it really is your microenvironments will push out bad bacteria or viruses and tell them that this is not a healthy place for you to survive as a bacteria. So the more we take care of ourselves, the more the oxygen is raised in our body, the more we have balance in so many other systems. And then naturally, through all of those principles, there's a natural detoxification that happens. There's autophagy and senescence that naturally happens. You can definitely amp that up through fasting or intermittent fasting. But naturally, when you have these other balances in place, your body starts to kind of gobble up the garbage as senescence in your body. And then there's an incredible other pillar I talk about, and that's hydration. We talked about that in the episode. It's one of the most favorite episodes. We talked about the importance of water. And this is astonishing to me that nearly 10% of all Americans don't even drink an ounce of water a day. And when you realize that 90% plus of your central nervous system and your brain is water, well over that of your blood, and the overall body is 70% water, that when you're under this kind of duress from the lack of water, that you're suboptimal in your thinking process, your thought process, your ability to detox. Water is like, think of water as your greatest detox. Mm-hmm. It's going in and out of the cell. It's able to pull the garbage out and get it out of your body through your kidney and colon and things like that. So I'm really talking about these systems that people need to be aware of as they're kind of in this modern day world. And when these systems are in balance, you're in balance. And then again, when we're aware of all of that stuff, then you can really start bringing in some of the power foods and the superfoods as well to kind of amp up. And especially now, like the adaptogens to help stress. We're all dealing with a level of stress right now because of our society problems, and adaptogens are a great way to help improve the stress levels.
One thing you said that I love, really helpful for me when I was first starting my journey into health. So many people think, well, as long as I'm putting food in my body, it's fuel. But I love what you said about making sure the environment is not friendly to microbes and germs and things that make you sick. And that was something that I learned. And my way of thinking about that helped me was when we were in Paris one time. There was a strike and there was trash on the street. They weren't picking up the trash, right? So all of a sudden you see critters coming out to get the trash. When there's no trash, there's no critter. So I started thinking, oh, wow, that's so interesting. If I don't take care of my internal body, I'm literally not taking out the trash so the rats and the germs and everything else can come and invade. But I'm very vulnerable and very susceptible. So I've got to keep that environment ultra clean. I got to keep that trash picked up and that detox system working really well. And you can only do that if you're doing the right things to support it.
I mean, that's so funny that you say that, because I use that exact example in my book.
Yeah.
So the trash example, like exactly what you just said, and that's if we are lacking the ability to take out that trash, then what has to show up as a part of this natural ecosystem? It's exactly.
It's got to go somewhere.
Well, that's one of the reasons why sleep is so important. People don't understand that when you sleep, your brain cleans or washes itself. It has a whole other glymphatic system that opens up during sleep. And it was only discovered recently that getting less than 7 hours of sleep at night, the trash begins to build up. And we, at our clinics, we have 8, soon to be 9 clinics around the country. We do brain imaging studies, and we just see people have sleep apnea or chronic insomnia. They have significantly lower function to really important areas of their brain. And so just the pillars that, we totally agree on, eating right, exercise, you just
hydration.
Mentioned in passing sunlight. but the dermatologists won. They made us afraid of the sun. And now 80% of the population is low in vitamin D. And if you're low in vitamin D, you're more susceptible to die from COVID-19. Yeah. And, vitamin D is sort of low vitamin D is a universal risk factor for so many different things, including cancer. So getting these foundational strategies, and none of it is hard. Being sick is hard.
Having cancer is hard.
Having cancer is hard. Well, when we come back, we're going to spend our final session with Darin actually answering your questions.
I love this.
We have a group of questions that we'll have Darin help us with. His book is SuperLife. Down to Earth is his new Netflix show. We are grateful to Darin so that we could introduce him to our Brain Warrior audience. So what did you learn? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. Write it down. Take a picture. Post it.
Share it.
Hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. We would be so grateful. Leave us a comment, question, or review. We'll enter you into a drawing to win either The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child or my new book, The End of Mental Illness. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Darin Olien. And we've been talking about his book, SuperLife, Down to Earth, his Netflix show with Zac Efron. So fun, so interesting. On a journey to help you be well and be able to live your mission and your purpose. There's just no way to do that unless you take care of your brain and your body. Yeah. And so in this episode, some of our Instagram followers submitted questions that we're going to get Darin to help us with. So Darin, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you. It's awesome to be here.
So the first question is, I'm ready to get fit. This is from Sarah. Where do I start?
Well, I think I would just say going for walks, getting outside is just extremely important. If you have that ability, moving your body, and also just not stacking it up as making it such a big deal. Because people, I think, overwhelm themselves right away. Like, I got to start this big program. I got to, sign up for this thing. It's going to be a financial commitment. And all of that could be true. But I think it's important just to, there's nothing more powerful than just walking and going outside and moving your body and taking in the sun and taking in the light and taking in the air. So I would just say, don't overwhelm yourself, get going, and then reach out to your network. Hey, what's working for you? What's working for you? What do you like? What do you guys want to join together on this thing? Like try to create a little bit of a community, because obviously when you have other people that are doing the same things as you have the ability to have responsibility for what you're doing. So I would say that, and then there's several opportunities for apps right now and YouTube videos to have a lot of. I created an app called 121 Tribe, where I have a bunch of functional stuff on and recipes and everything else, and we give 3 days free on that. So I recognize that it's overwhelming for some people, but at the same time, don't make it overwhelming and move your body as much as you can.
I love that. And one thing, if I could add to that, people will often write into me and say, but I can't because of X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And whatever the X, Y, and Z is, I always use two examples. Natalie, who's our social media director, and I believe you've been in contact with Natalie. She's just a warrior. I love that girl. She broke her neck when she was 16, and she's a quadriplegic. And her workout will make people's heads spin. So here's a girl in a wheelchair, and she was told she'd never walk, and now she walks with a walker. But she swims, and her workouts are intense. And my other friend, Jacob, who has cerebral palsy, who is wheelchair bound, but has the best attitude I've ever seen in life, and got his black belt in Kempo. So whenever you think you can't do it, I just want you to think about all the people who can't do it, who do it anyways. And it doesn't mean you can do that thing. Find something to do. If it's flapping your arms, just do something, right? It's find something to move your body.
Exactly.
All right. The next question from Caleb. Should I stay away from carbs? Carbs just cause fat gain. Right. Wrong. So, you'd mentioned in an earlier episode about carbs, and they may not be the enemy. So I'd love your take on it. We talk about smart carbs versus dumb carbs. So carbs that increase inflammation, which are generally very high processed, high glycemic, pro-inflammatory carbs. But broccoli has carbs, and spinach has carbs, and bell peppers
Blueberries
have carbs. And so when people go after and demonize carbs, what's generally your response?
I love carbs, and it's that whole food kind of principle. Listen, and you also have to understand that where people are at right now, there might be sensitivities. They might have already damaged their insulin. They might be pre-diabetic. They might be diabetic. So you have to be sensitive to where they're starting for sure. But carbs are not the enemy in their whole food form. But when we start taking things out of their normal state, we start taking sugars out of their, fiber, antioxidant rich matrix that they are naturally in, then that starts to become a problem. For me, I eat literally a bowl of fruit that is got 3 bananas and dates and blueberries and apples and peaches and plums. I literally just ate that before I got on here. And there's a great book actually called Mastering Diabetes that gets into the heavy science behind there. It is starting to show that, and not only starting to showing that, this high saturated fat can start thwarting and affecting this insulin sensitivity and actually not being the carbs directly as we thought it was. So getting back to sense, everything. So every food has protein, fats, carbohydrates, every single food. It's not food and creating this kind of, again, this demonizing approach to this carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It's looking at the whole matrix. And if you stay with that common sense and not reduce it down and have chips as your carbohydrates and have all of this other processed stuff, which can definitely cause problems, and go back to whole food eating, it virtually can reverse many of the problems that people have created when they're not eating those kinds of things.
So 50%, I mean, it's this shocking statistic, but it comes from the Journal of the American Medical Association. 50% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. So 14% of us are diabetic, 36% are pre-diabetic, and both of us have people we love that were just ravaged with diabetes. And diabetes actually skyrocketed right before the obesity epidemic. And it was correlated with the toxic load in our body. So if you poison an organ, like you poison the pancreas, you're much more likely to be diabetic. But at the same time, managing your blood sugar, at least for us, we think about low glycemic foods is probably a smarter way to go, because your blood sugar won't vacillate as much as the, pancake sugar load. that you get.
Yeah. And I think we underestimate exercise in this too sometimes. I mean, if you're pre-diabetic, I'm pre-diabetic by nature, but my blood sugar now is perfect. But I work out every day, and that's one of the best things you can do to increase insulin sensitivity besides your diet. I mean, with everything we're talking about, that Darin's talking about, critical, but exercise is also critical, and moving your body, and it increases for the more muscle you have on your body, the more insulin sensitive you are. So it really helps to reverse that tide. So doing those together is very powerful.
All right. From Linda, are energy drinks still bad if they are sugar-free?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Well, there's so much to look at with that. I mean, energy drink, and there's some energy drinks starting to be like more holistic that are popping up too. So it's hard to, but if you're thinking about like the Monster energy drinks and Red Bulls and all of this stuff, yeah, I mean, sugar-based stimulants, high caffeines, those are a really horrible way of trying to get energy. And again, your systems are compromised, so you're already behind the 8 ball in terms of being able to produce energy. The trick is that we are low in energy, so we seek energy. So we think that these things are a way out of our kind of depression of energy, when in fact we have to kind of go back to nurturing our bottom line. But yeah, these things are not, high amounts of caffeine are a big problem over a long period of time, and adds a debt of stress that is extremely difficult, and also inhibits the body's ability to repair. I worked with one of the leading stem cell doctors in the world, and over 100 milligrams of caffeine every day starts killing the top stem cells in the body, called totipotent stem cells. So sugar is poison. That isolated sugar is poison, and on top of it, high amounts of caffeine is just a prescription for disaster.
Well, and so are artificial sweeteners, though, because when she said sugar-free,
oh yeah, of course,
so sucralose and aspartame,
really bad.
Are not good for you. All right, one more. When should I eat? Do I need breakfast? Mm-hmm. And what do I eat after a workout? And this is from Kaylee.
Now these are great questions. I mean, I think this one is, I tend to lean towards the centurions. I tend to lean towards that data, and I also tend to lean towards the data of Ayurveda, which is kind of the 20,000 years of use. And that is, aside from, I think fasting and intermittent fasting can be great, but kind of leaving that aside for the moment, I think that eat when you're hungry, coming out of sleeping. I definitely think being sensible around that, being whole food, fruits and stuff, and balanced whole foods is great during that time. And then eating a majority of your calories before noon, and maybe having a lunch, and then kind of dropping your calories, because there's kind of this heat of digestion that's very powerful in the morning, and as it goes up to about noon, and at about 2 o'clock it starts dropping off. And the problem I think that I see is a lot of people flip that whole thing and don't eat much or drink their coffee, and then at the end of the day they're so ravaged with hunger they slam all these calories in right before they're going to go to bed. And I think that number one, you don't sleep well that way. And number two, it just goes against kind of this metabolic curve that seems to be prevalent in kind of this circadian rhythm of metabolism.
If you eat before bed, you also have a higher risk of a heart attack and stroke, because
there you go.
You're a non-dipper. So I love that term, non-dipper. So for healthy people, if they stop eating at least 3 hours before bed, their blood pressure drops. And when your blood pressure goes down, you're at less risk for heart attack and stroke. But if you eat close to bedtime, that's stressful for the body. The body has to manage all of that. Your blood pressure does not dip before bed or when you're sleeping, putting you at risk for big trouble. So you don't want to be a non-dipper. What about the workout? post-workout. Do you have a thought on that?
I mean, I definitely think that, I like to stress myself out and sometimes, and I'll fast afterwards a few hours, but for the most part, I like to eat something after a workout, because typically I will, fast a bit from the night before. Like I said, I probably am done eating by about 5 at night usually. And then I won't eat anything till after my workout for the first time. And that's about 9:30. So I love to eat and replenish, with some great food after, a workout. And I love the fruit side of things, and letting the body uptake all that glycogen that I just annihilated out of my system from the workout.
It's awesome. Well, we are so grateful to meet you and look forward to spending time together after the world becomes a little more normal. Darin Olien, his book is SuperLife. You can see him on Netflix in his new show, Down to Earth with Zac Efron.
It's really fun.
It's fun. And we're grateful that you're bringing this information to the world. I mean, we need to be serious about our health if we want to keep. And, Tan often says, we can keep you alive for a long time.
I was an ICU nurse.
On ventilators.
I know how we can keep you alive, but you're not living.
But you're not living. And we want you to stay alive for a long time with the quality of
health
life.
Span.
So what did you learn? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. Go to Brain Warriors Way podcast. Tag Brain Warriors Way podcast. We'd be grateful. Or go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Leave us a comment, question, or review. And
Darin, how can people find you? What's the easiest way for them to follow you, find you? Why don't you let them know?
Yeah, so DarinOlien.com has basically everything up there that I'm doing. Darin Olien on Instagram, Twitter, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we'll be back.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com, or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.